Area 10, please.
My name is Sheena Sho from the Academy of Finance. What recommendations would you give us as teenagers to prepare for our future and become as successful as you?
Well, if you're interested in business, I definitely think you ought to learn all the accounting you can by the time you're in your early 20s. Accounting is the language of business. Now, that doesn't mean it's a perfect language, so you have to know the limitations of that language as well as all aspects of it. So I would advise you to learn accounting, and I would advise you to be, in terms of part-time employment or anything else, work at a number of businesses. There's nothing like seeing how business operates to build your judgment in the future about businesses. When you understand what kind of things are very competitive and what kind of things are less competitive and why that works that way, all of that adds to your knowledge. So I would do a lot of reading. If you're interested in investments, I would take the accounting courses. I do a lot of reading about investments, and I would get as much business experience. I would talk business with people that are in business to find out what they think makes their operation tick or where they have problems and why. I just think you just kind of sop it up every place that you can, and if it turns you on, you'll do well in it. I mean, I think that if it there certain activities grab different people, but if business is of interest to you, my guess is you'll do well. And if you understand business, you understand investments. Investments are simply business decisions that in terms of capital. Investments are simply business decisions that in terms of capital.
Yeah, there's also the little matter of underspending.
Mastered.
Yes. That really works if you keep at it.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie and I both. Charlie started having children at a rapid rate, so he was a lawyer when there was not big money, and then, but I was any money you save before you get out and start having a family is probably worth any dollar is probably worth $10 later on, simply because you can save it. It's the time to save is young, and you'll never have a better time to save than really pre-formation of a family, because the expenditures come along then, whether you like them or not. So work for yourself first and put the money aside. I was lucky that way. I didn't have to pay for my own college. Probably wouldn't have gone to college if I'd had to pay for it. But I was able to save everything I made in my teens, and those dollars got magnified quite a bit. Whereas the money when I started first selling securities, I mean the money I made then was taken up by family needs to quite an extent. So start saving early. A lot of it's habit anyway, so it's a great habit to have. Okay, zone 1, please.
I'm Tony Alsnett from New York City. Following up on the questionnaire from London, in light of the current dearth of investment opportunities, do you see yourselves investing in non-U.S. companies which are well managed, understandable, and growing?
Well, if we find such companies as you describe at a price that's half attractive, we're perfectly willing to buy them. So the answer to that is yes, but we would be looking to an extent worldwide, irrespective of market conditions in the United States. Now, market valuations in this country tend to be fairly well matched in most of the major countries. So there's been a bull market all over the world in a huge way in the bigger markets, and so unfortunately, I mean, it would have been nice for us if the U.S. market had tripled and other markets had stayed the same, and then we would be very likely to be finding things abroad. We're not finding them abroad, but we're certainly looking for the kind of thing you're talking about. We are not reluctant to invest abroad, and Our all three of our largest holdings, American Express, Gillette, and Coke, and we're talking about $25 billion of market value there that we have. All three of those have major businesses abroad, and in the case of Coke and Gillette, it's a majority of their earnings from abroad. So we're interested, and there's better growth opportunities in many areas abroad than here. Finding bargains as we look around the world. Charlie?
Nothing more.
Okay. Area 2?
Second question has to do with Ben Graham. And he changed his valuation standards as the decades progressed. When he couldn't buy stocks below net, he changed his standards because the environment changed. Now, the world today seems to be a much different place than in 1989 when the USSR collapsed. Even they are stumbling toward the free enterprise system. The Russian mafia is a perverse illustration of that. Now there is only one superpower in the world, the USA, and we must be extremely grateful for the men who put us on the track to the free enterprise system. Now, the free enterprise system is out of the bottle. It's not going to get back in. It seems to be expanding and accelerating around the world. With the resulting expansion of world trade, may that lead to a reevaluation of historical measures for measuring investments?
Well, my answer to that would be that I doubt it, but I also don't know. But I don't think that the end of the Cold War is something that I would factor into my evaluation of businesses. There are all kinds of events that happen, and their impact in terms of being quantified, very difficult to figure over time. Very difficult to isolate any single variable in a complex economic equation. So in terms of how the world is going to work 10 years from now, or the returns are going to be on equity in business, I don't know what will be all the variables that impact on that. And obviously, right now people are very bullish about the fact that those returns, or something like those returns, will continue. But I would not rely in making such a projection on the fact that the Cold War has ended, or really any political or economic development around the world. I don't know how to predict future earnings of American business. And when I look at all of the great historic events of the past, nothing there gives me much in the way of a clue as to which ones would signal major changes in profitability of American business. Charlie?
Well, I think you raised one very interesting question. If the rest of the world becomes very much more prosperous, as it will if it adopts the free enterprise system, which investments are likely to do best? I would argue that the Cokes and Gillettes and so on are likely to be helped by a great increase in prosperity in what is now the third world. And I'm not so sure that's true of a lot of other businesses.
We like the international businesses we have, and as I say, that our three top holdings all have a major international aspect to them, and really in aggregate a dominant international aspect to them. And there's no question in my mind that a Coke will grow faster outside of the United States than in the United States, and the same is true of Gillette, and really the same is true of American Express. So that's built into our evaluation of those businesses. But I felt that way before 1989 too. I mean, it's very hard to evaluate how the ball is going to bounce generally, but around the world. But it is a plus to have products such as Gillette has or Coke have that have demonstrated the fact that they travel extraordinarily well around the world, that people crave those products, and that they're going to, no one's going to find a way to do it better than those two companies in their respective fields. So, and they sell an inexpensive products. So all of that's going for us. But in terms of how stocks generally sell or the profitability of American business generally is in the future, it doesn't help me. Okay, Zone 8, please.
Hello, I'm Jamie McMahon from Birmingham, Alabama, and I was hoping that Mr. Buffett and Mr. Munger, y'all would expand a little bit on your ideas of an inheritance and the positive and negative influences that can have on your heirs, and what you might be able to do as a business person and an investor and as a parent to sort of mitigate those negative influences.
Yeah, well, I quoted, I think Kay Graham was quoting her father at the time, but some years back as saying, if you're quite rich, probably the idea of leaving your children enough so they can do anything but not enough so they can do nothing is not a bad formula. I think if you're talking about people that aren't quite rich, I see, socially I wouldn't have a system that involved inheritances, but recognizing the situation that exists, I think probably at lower levels that leaving to the children in this society is perfectly okay. But I believe enough in a meritocracy that if I were devising the system with a consumption tax and everything, I would probably make inheritance a form of consumption, and it would be very heavily taxed, because I don't believe that because you happen to come out of the right womb, essentially, that you are entitled to live an entirely different life than somebody who wasn't quite as lucky in terms of womb selection. But in my own case, I follow the enough so they can do anything, but not enough so they can do nothing. I think that society showered all these. I was very lucky. I was wired the right way at the right time in history to do very well in this kind of a market economy where, as Bill Gates has told me, if I was born some thousands of years ago, I'd been some animal's lunch. I don't run very fast, and there are different assets that are useful at different times, and I'm not wired to play championship bridge or championship chess, or I'm not wired to be a basketball star or anything. It just so happens I'm in an area where it pays off like crazy to be good at capital allocation, and that doesn't make me a more worthwhile human being than anybody else or anything. It just means I was lucky. And that luck enable many generations of people that I would have some reservations about that. So that's my own feeling on inheritance. But Charlie has a bigger family, and he can give you a better answer.
Well, I feel in a capitalist system that there should be an inheritance tax, and that once that's been imposed and paid, what each person wants to do in his own testamentary arrangements is up to that person. I see very few people that I regard as ruined by money. Many of the people that I see ruined who have money would have been ruined without money. And I think the percentage of the people that are going to be living the life of the French aristocracy before the revolution is always going to be very small, and living the life of the French aristocracy before the revolution is always going to be very small, and there are plenty of grasping people to take the money away from the whole class of incompetents ruling the world as their money cascades ever higher. So I like a fair amount of charity, and certainly some testamentary charity is okay. But I feel as an individual choice that people have to make.